Alright, I know I just said this video was going to be about Indiana Jones, but I got surgery and these two were coming out sooner than it would take for this Indiana Jones video to come out, so I decided to pre-game for this and release that later. And then maybe TMNT, I don't know, let's see where we go from there. So this is quite possibly the most anticipated day in the film community this year, as July 21st saw the release of Barbie by Greta Gerwig and Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan, two movies that have incredibly dedicated fan bases, look incredible based on their promotional material, and had two very conflicting tones releasing on the exact same day. This was a monumental day in modern cinema, and after all the shit with the SAG strikes and all the movies in June bombing, this was a really nice day to be a fan of movies. I also think it's really interesting how these two movies being on the same day help advertise them more. I mean, there were already thousands of people booking double features on that day, and your boy was no exception. I booked a 12 p.m. screening of Oppenheimer and a 3:40 screening of Barbie on that day, and saw both of them. And even though they had two wildly different tones and I spent a total of 6.5 hours in a movie theater that day, I still came out of that experience incredibly happy, because both of these movies are incredible. So without further ado, let's talk about both of these films in the order I saw them in. Also, spoilers for both of them.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Looking back on my experience with this film, I'm honestly a little glad that I saw Oppenheimer first, because between the two, this would have been a terrible movie to leave the theater with. That's not to say it isn't a great movie, it's fucking phenomenal, but it's very emotionally draining, and even now, after seeing Barbie directly after it and having time to sit, there are still moments from this film that are burned into my brain. It's not a horror movie, but it was one of the most emotionally disturbing films I've seen all year. Let's talk about what everyone is talking about with this movie, which is that it looks fucking amazing. It was shot with 11-mile-long film, and even if I unfortunately couldn't get an IMAX screening, I still very much appreciated the shot composition, the editing, the different color schemes, and the production design to truly make me immersed into the mind of this emotionally disturbed physicist. The score was one of the best of the year, as it expertly built tension and fit every scene perfectly. Probably my second favorite after Spider-Verse. They advertised this movie by saying that none of the shots used any CG, and going in knowing that and seeing these bombs explode and these practical effects made them somehow more impressive than if they were computer generated. Especially the nuke testing scene itself. It's one of the most mind-blowing scenes I've seen all year. The acting in this movie was amazing across the board, with standouts for me being Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon, and Robert Downey Jr. He went a really long way since playing Tony Stark, and it's clear that out of everyone who started acting again after the MCU, Robert got out of it the most unscathed. His character was very on and off, but he does pick up in the last third and becomes a very strong, petty counter to Oppenheimer. And that's not to mention other actors like Albert Einstein, Freddie Mercury, and is that fucking Roderick? This story is a very interesting one, showing us the upbringing of Oppenheimer, him working on the Manhattan Project, and his trial afterwards. As someone who never followed the story as far as this film went, I was a little surprised to see that the nuclear bomb just happened at the tail end of the second act, and a lesser film would have probably just ended there, with maybe a scene or two afterwards. But this is not a lesser film. This is Oppenheimer. So the last hour of this movie is dedicated to showing you the fucked up mental state and absolutely unenviable position of being known as the dude who made the atomic fucking bomb. and the sound design, editing, and score really put this thick layer of horror and tension to nearly the entire last hour of this film, leading to an absolutely sensational ending which left me speechless. It was kind of funny going into Barbie, as half of the people going in were like people who were super excited. They were families, groups of girls, and just people who went in with a bright, positive attitude. And then you just have me and a few others from the Oppenheimer screening who came in looking like the fucking void emoji. There were a couple small issues with the movie to keep it from the 10 out of 10 it was very close to. For starters, this film is 3 hours long and you can definitely feel the length. Not to say there's anything wrong with longer films, but there were definitely moments in the middle that made my mind wander a bit. Another issue I have is with Florence Pugh's character. I'm not entirely sure what her significance to the film was other than being another thing to mount onto Oppenheimer's decaying mental state. I saw this tweet that was like, life served cunt death, and captioned it with the Florence Pugh character, and yeah, that's about right. I think writing interesting female characters has been a consistent weird spot in Nolan's movies, but this is one of the better ones I've seen, so even then I'd say this is still better than most of his other films in that regard. And that's it. That's literally all of the issues with this movie. None of them are all that major. This movie is absolutely amazing. It's long, slow, and very emotionally heavy, so it's not the easiest to recommend to everyone, but for anyone who's really interested in the art of cinema and wanting to see a true cinematic marvel on the big screen, this movie is definitely for you. You have time. This movie's gonna be in theaters for like 100 days. You can go in whenever you want. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. So that's one great movie down, so let's get into the other great movie I saw yesterday.
You are a child's plaything!
The discussion around Barbie is a very interesting one to be in the middle of, for a variety of reasons. I should first preface this segment saying that I loved this movie, and think it's another one of the best of this year. But I feel like I went into this film with a certain advantage over most moviegoers. That advantage being, I know what Greta Gerwig films are like. I loved both Lady Bird and Little Women, so me going into Barbie and getting a deconstruction of the patriarchy is something that just kinda tracks for her. And out of all of their films to talk about the subject, I think this one handles it the best by using a popular toy that's already tied to this discussion. It tells a very emotional story that has many moments that left me in awe, even as someone who is very clearly not the target audience. I still came out impressed at how Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach still pump out absolutely incredible scripts even 6 years later after Lady Bird. The last 10 minutes of this film elevated the score for me and was an absolutely perfect ending. But don't let all this emotional stuff stop you, because Barbie is still a comedy first and foremost, and as one, it is very strong. Both in terms of the performances, writing, and editing, the jokes land hit after hit. I didn't laugh out loud, but I definitely found a lot of the jokes very smart. There was one that got very close, but I don't know, maybe I was just recovering from the Bomb movie. And speaking of performances, they were great across the board. Margot Robbie is very good as Barbie and lands both the emotional scenes and jokes pretty well. But Ryan Gosling as Ken, oh my god. He is the best thing about this movie and maybe one of the best performances all year. He has such amazing comedic timing, and his general vibe throughout the movie is one that needs to be seen to be believed. I just watched Blade Runner 2 weeks ago and La La Land 2 weeks before that, so now I fully get the hype behind this guy. This dude has a musical number near the end, and it manages to thread the needle between being a very funny song, but also one that ties brilliantly into his storyline. Everyone else also did a very good job, with the sole exception being Simu Liu, who was kinda bad, not gonna lie. Special shoutouts though to Will Ferrell for playing the Warner Bros. CEO. He didn't play the Warner Bros. CEO, but he played the Warner Bros. CEO. Pay your writers. It's kinda interesting how it took this long before I brought it up, but this film may have the best production design I've seen all year. I mean, just fucking look at it. It's beautiful. The plastic sheen all over the furniture and the food looks so authentically fake, it's amazing. Barbie Land just looks so great in this movie. I mean, I'd hope so if it caused a national shortage of pink paint for a little bit. But yeah, it looks amazing. The editing and shot compositions are very good, even if I like the stuff in Little Women a little better, and it has a pretty great soundtrack. As much as I love this movie, I do have to say though, there was a stretch in the middle of this movie when they were in the real world that felt kind of boring? I don't even really know why, but I just kind of checked out by this point, but definitely clocked back in when the Kens took over. I think due to its shorter runtime, it's a bit more of a problem here than in Oppenheimer because there's more of the movie that I would want to skip than Oppenheimer, making it a little less rewatchable. But it's fine overall. This is a very great movie that you can tell everyone on the production team had fun with. It's both emotionally powerful and fun and hilarious, even if it's not paced the best. This continues Greta Gerwig's already great reputation, and I couldn't be happier that this film turned out this good. I will also give this a 9 out of 10. Now, you're probably wondering, if I gave both of these the same scores and I saw them both on the same day, which one of these films did I like more? And after putting a lot of thought into this question, I think the answer became very clear to me. So, between Barbie and Oppenheimer, my answer to that question is shut the fuck up and die.